Hey guys, Teresa with Sippy Couture. Thank you so much for checking out my channel. Before I get started, I need to ask you guys to please like, subscribe, give this a thumbs up, and comment on this video. That really does a lot to help out my channel, and it would just so greatly appreciated, and I always forget to say it while I'm doing voiceovers. Okay, this tumbler that we're doing today, I had a dream about this, and it came out just so pretty and perfect, exactly how I was thinking. So I'm so excited to share this with you, and we're going to get right started with it. I sanded my tumbler, spray painted it white, and now I'm going on with tack it over and over. Whenever you do your spray paint, you don't want it to be drippy for this, so just do light even coats until you have full coverage of spray paint. We don't want to be able to see any of that stainless through that white, so make sure you get good coverage. For this tack it, I do not water it down. I use it right out of the bucket, and I put a decent little amount on my cup to start out with. I go around in circles and then up and down until I'm comfortable that it's all spread out evenly. You can tell whenever you're doing this when it starts to dry because your paintbrush will get a little grabby, like it will want to stick to the areas of tack it that are starting to dry, and that's kind of my gauge of when I know it's pretty close and coated everywhere. Whatever's extra, I just wipe it back into that bucket. Next, we're dropping on ivory. This glitter is absolutely gorgeous. It's from Backfist Customs, and it's my favorite ivory glitter in the world. It's just so perfect. We're going to spread that on the tumbler to sprinkle it on, and then we're going to lay it flat with our fingers. I'm not using a ton of pressure here. We're not trying to be super aggressive. We're just laying this glitter down over that tack it, and it will grab on and it will all lay nicely. Now for this cup, I actually did 3 coats of ivory. Normally, I just do 1 coat whenever I'm doing tack it method, but this glitter does have a really pretty base ivory to it, and the second coat gave it that deeper ivory color, but I knew a third coat would give me the exact result I was looking for. So just go ahead and put your tack it on a few times as needed until you get the coverage that you'd like. The epoxy that we're using for this tumbler is Artist Cure epoxy from Flynn Sisters Supply Shop. The shine on this epoxy and clarity is absolutely amazing, and the vision I have for this just needs to be flawless. So I knew this epoxy is going to do exactly what I want. I measured it equal ratio, parts A and part B by volume, not by weight. Mix it up good, and then we're going to go ahead and spread it on the tumbler. It's super easy to work with. One part of this epoxy is slightly thinner than the other, so it isn't hard to mix at all. It combines nice. Use a heat gun if you need to help spread it out, and then a torch to pop any bubbles. You do not need a lot of epoxy for this, just one simple thin coat, and then we'll be ready for our next step. Next, I get a cup edging tool and I just clean up the bottom of that tumbler. I stuck a little craft knife between the bottom setting, the lowest setting, and the blade. That way it gives it a little more stability and it doesn't tend to wobble on me. I know that I can just tape this off, but I'm so bad at remembering to pull tape that it ends up being more work in the long run. And this is pretty easy for me since I'm kind of in the habit of doing it this way. So I just run it around there a few times. It gives me a nice, clean, even line. And then from there, I can take my craft knife to go around and clean it up, get rid of any extra glitter, and then acetone on a dry baby wipe or napkin, and that will help to get rid of any paint in those areas. Also, since I do not do the bottom of my tumblers, I use my cup edging tool and then just epoxy to almost to that rim. I go ahead and flip this over and clean off that bottom rim. That way, whenever this does set down onto the counter, it's going to be resting on that stainless and not on epoxy. The bottom of that tumbler I did pop off, and I didn't video that. I've done it a few times in videos, and if you want to see a tutorial on it, leave me a comment down below and let me know, and I'll make sure I get a tutorial done just on the bottom. I know I did one before with a little camper mug that I did, so you may be able to check that one. While I'm at it, I'm also going to take my sanding sponge and hold it on an angle against that rim and go back and forth and just remove the paint that's right there on the rim of the tumbler. I want to make sure I get a really good seal on this, and getting that glitter off the rim of that tumbler is going to make it a lot easier. I designed all the artwork for this in Cricut, and I went ahead and have it available on my Etsy shop at Sippy Couture as an SVG if you want to go grab it. For the floral, that was a little more tricky. I don't completely love the clarity of the image, and I did it on waterside. So if you have a different color floral that you love that you can easily get from someone, I would just buy it already done, because, I mean, watersides aren't difficult, but my printer, I don't know, sometimes my printer doesn't give me the color I want, so definitely easier to go buy that than try to print it in waterside, but I will show you how to waterside everything. So I have all the spacing worked out for this. I went ahead and weeded it, and I cut apart those little hearts at the end because I wasn't sure if it was going to overlap behind this waterside, and since it's on a transparent waterside, we would be able to see any hearts behind it. Okay, I seriously love the water slide paper that I use. I got it off Amazon. This is a transparent clear, and they do have a white version also. I'll have that linked in the description. I went ahead and printed 2 of each floral because it needs to be a little deeper of a color, and I'm going to layer it. It is windy today, so you'll see everything flying around, but just do light coats. I think in all, I gave this 3 coats of clear gloss spray paint. And it worked out perfect. That's all it needed. I let it sit and dry overnight to make sure it's going to be easy for me to work with the next day. So when I'm designing things, I'm a very visual person, and I don't quite know how something's going to lay out until I actually get it in its spot, and then I make changes as I feel like it's working or not. So right here is just printed on regular sheet of paper, the decal and how I think it's going to look once I want it on the tumbler, and I'm using that for my spacing. Like I said, transparent water slide, so we will be able to see those hearts behind the water slide, and I really didn't want to because it would take away from the kind of the vibrance of that flowers to see, you know, just a black little heart behind it. It would be tough to tell what it was. So I got that in place, like I said, just a visual, and I knew where I would want my hearts to go. So now I'm going to put that down this little Cricut mat. I feel like it's a lot easier to grab a piece whenever I'm transferring it when it's, you know, already attached to something. For things that are tougher to weed, I turn that paper upside down and I pull the paper from the backing. I pull everything from the back, and I find that it stays put a little more. The hinge method is how we're applying these hearts. Cut a little piece off of that vinyl, of that the back of that transfer tape, stick it to your cup, wrap everything around, get it in the position that you want, and then you can easily remove that paper. For this part, I'm taking the hearts off that I don't want that are covered. Whenever you're getting it into position, you can see where it's going to lay, and then we can go ahead and adjust from there. I kind of went around in circles a few times with the layout of these roses and trying to make sure I didn't see hearts. So you'll see me putting hearts down and removing it quite a bit right here until I really set on the size that I wanted and the layout that I wanted for this direction and everything. And I love the way it looked turned sideways. So in the end, that's what I ended up doing. I'm taping it into place just so I can really turn it in circles and look at it and honestly run out to the garage and show my husband. And try to like get feedback on if it was a good idea or not. So that kind of gave me a really good way to look at what I'm doing, have it in place, because once you get water slide on here, although it's removable, I didn't want to mess with it too much because I really don't like placing it, especially with the fact that I had to layer it and my printer worked well, like really well for the ones that I needed printed. Also, before I get into the water slide part, this black vinyl is amazing, guys. I want to say it's Oracle. I think it's listed as a permanent vinyl, but it removes so easily, and it's my go-to black vinyl. It has a matte look to it, so even if you pull up a heart and one part kind of slightly bends in a section, once you put epoxy over it, you won't even notice. It's the most forgiving black vinyl I've ever worked with my entire life. I just love it, so that is definitely linked in the description for you guys. Something I forgot to say, I did sand my tumbler. In the same process of removing the edge before I put on all of these hearts, I did give my full tumbler a light sand. That way the vinyl will lay really nice on it and I can give it a layer of epoxy. That's exactly what I'm doing right here. Whenever you're putting down a water slide, you do not want to put it over a sanded surface. If you do, that water slide will look a little bit cloudy behind it. You want it to go over a glossy surface. I have in the past sanded my tumbler and then applied a clear gloss spray paint, and that was enough. If you want to be extra safe, then go ahead after you sand it, give it a layer of epoxy, and then put that decal over the glossy layer of epoxy, unsanded, because that is super important. If your edges of that decal are white, it doesn't matter too much, but if it's transparent behind that decal, it will look flat. So just please keep that in mind. Super thin layer of epoxy right here, nothing special. Same thing again, get that on, let this set, and then we're ready for our water slide. I'm also going to take a quick minute to show you how I clean up the bottom of that tumbler as I put the layer on of this epoxy. I do this for every step after I clean off that bottom. I have my dry baby wipe here with some rubbing alcohol, and I have my fingernail just below where that line is, and I use that just to go through and push that epoxy up. What it does is it removes the epoxy that's almost at that edge and it pulls it back. That way it will stop the epoxy from curving around the bottom of the tumbler. Okay, for the water slide, I am layering the water slide. I let it sit in a little bucket of warm water. I find that the warm water helps it release a little quicker than in cold water. You're going to need some water on your tumbler. That way this water slide can slide around. When I put this in the bucket, I laid it in without it curving on me, and then I made sure to flip it upside down and flip it over a few times and not bend it, but kind of rotate it and push on it a little to help the water get between the paper and the image. Like I said, make sure your tumbler is wet. Get that water slide on there. It slides right off. It's super, super easy. Slide that off on there and then get it into position. If you need any help with this, you can leave me a note in the comments. Leave me a comment below, or find me on Sippy Couture community. You can message me and I can help you with this because they're really easy to work with. It's just kind of learning to get it done the first time. So I have that one set in place. I'm going to go ahead and squeegee out some of the water behind it. Not a lot, just a little of the water behind it. That way I can get this next one on. Okay, one of the things with this, when you have these flowers that are in different directions, make sure they line up right. So you'll see me turning this a few times to make sure I have those flowers lined up. Once I figured it out, we went ahead and just slid it right on top. Again, the wet from this bottom water slide paper is going to help me get everything into place. You do not want to put this over the other one when it's dry because they do tend to shrink up. So don't dry it off. Just squeeze out a little of that water, wet the next one, and then get it into place. These are really easy to line up. It's almost like you see blurry and then you put on a pair of glasses, to be honest with you. It's super easy to tell when it lines up because just the fuzziness goes away and it gets super crisp. This only needed 2 layers. I mean, if you want to be completely bold with it, you can do a third, but like I said, 2 layers worked great. So get that into place. Once you're happy with it, go ahead and start squeegeeing it out. You're going to squeegee the water. Make sure you have a napkin close by. That way, as you squeegee it, you can wipe off some of that water and help to dry it out. Also, make sure you're squeegeeing in a bunch of different directions to help that water get from the back of it. Don't rub it too hard with your napkin or paper towel because you don't want anything to peel up. And if it's too dry and you do rub it with a napkin, you can kind of crinkle the paint a little, like that clear spray paint, you can crack it. So just be careful with that. Just like I said, squeegee, napkin, softly pat it, and make sure you get all the water out. I took a craft knife and you'll see me just trimming the flowers that overlapped on the edges. I wanted to not have to fight with that later, and it's easy right now to trim that up just shy of where your glitter stops. That way you'll get a good seal when it's time for your epoxy. I do not seal my water slides after I get them on, but they do need to be completely dry and set. So I let it sit for several hours before I go on to epoxy. While that waits and dries, we're going to go ahead and do the bottom of this tumbler. Like I said, this is the glitter butt that I just love doing. They come out super cute. All of the Tipsy Magnolia tumblers, well, I believe all the Tipsy Magnolia tumblers have this. The bottom of this tumbler was spray painted with everything else, so we're good to just go on with our fast cure epoxy from Flynn Sisters Boutique. We're adding some ivory into this epoxy to go ahead and throw this on the bottom. Now this bottom is going to have a different look than the top of the tumbler just because it's tack it method versus just a kind of the loose look of glitter. But for the bottom of the tumbler, it isn't that big of a deal. And it's still going to look really, really pretty. I just didn't want to have to use a ton of epoxy, you know, to backfill it and everything first, when I could just add it in here and have a really pretty look. This whole thing is getting ivory, so we're going to go ahead and put that in, get it around, make sure it's level. Hit it with your heat gun to help it level out a little more if you need to. Torch it to pop any bubbles and let this cure. I stared at this tumbler for a little bit and realized that Love You More, it needs to be in gold. It's going to match that stripe that I'm doing around the top and bottom a lot better. So I switched it to gold, and I like to layer this on top of this little Cricut mat. That way that bottom piece won't jump around on me. I do not have a layer of epoxy over this water side, but it is really dry. As long as you're using a soft transfer tape, like something that isn't super grabby, you can put it right on top. So I did that just to save a layer of epoxy. The transfer tape I'm using right here is clear contact paper, and it's not grabby. I don't know. It isn't super grabby, so it's a lot easier to get that on there. I placed it just how I wanted, and sideways. I don't know. I looked at it and I was like, I want it sideways. So I don't know. I switched it because I had it like white and straight and simple and perfect. But after looking at it, I don't know, something about it being sideways on there, I just loved. So I put that on there gently. I only rubbed in the letters where it was going to lay on the tumbler to make sure that I didn't get onto those flowers just in case. So then I took just a piece of vinyl that I had laying around, and I use the back of the vinyl to lay that across, and I'm squeegeeing it down into place to make sure that I don't mess up any of the vinyl or any of the floral behind it. Okay, so the color that I'm using for this, it's like this really soft champagne gold. It's just absolutely gorgeous. It matches everything just perfectly. Also, I'm sorry for the bad camera angle and the speed. I keep jumping around with the speed, but I'm trying to make sure I can get everything done in a good time for you guys. But it's super easy for this. We're going just under where that line is of glitter because we want to make sure that we get a really good seal. We don't want this to be hanging off or be half on the stainless or half on the glitter. So go right up against that line on the top and on the bottom, bring it around. I like to overlap this finishing tape just a little. That way it will kind of hold itself down. I found the times where I cut it, perfectly even. I ended it right next to each other. It wanted to separate. So I like to overlap it just a tad, and it's so little you can't even tell. So once that was set into place, rub your finger around, make sure it's on there super tight, and it's time to get to the bottom of this tumbler. We're doing the same thing with the florals like we did for the water slide on the other one. We're going to cut this out, let it soak in that little tub of warm water again, and then we're going to layer it right onto our tumbler. Like I said, same process as before. Get it in the water, turn it upside down a little bit. You can see me kind of curving it and working the water into it. And then once it starts to separate, you're good to go on your tumbler. I went ahead and lined it up so it's sort of facing that same direction as the top to keep it consistent. I put the first one on, squeegeed out a little water, get the second one in place, squeegeed out the rest, made sure it was all even, and then tapped it with that paper towel to remove any excess water. I really wanted this to tie in with the rest of the tumbler, so I have some of those hearts in smaller sizes, and I'm just going to place those in about the same pattern, but I'm not going to use any transfer tape. I'm just going to put them on my craft knife and then lay them about even to where it would be. And it's such a small space that it works out perfect. Even if it's not completely perfectly lined up, it still works out and plays off great. That needs to dry. So as that's drying, we're going to go ahead and get our final layers of epoxy on the top of the tumbler. I'm just going a thin layer of epoxy on here. I want to make sure that everything is set in place and I get great coverage. I always do 2 layers of epoxy over decals. So this is the first of the final layers. There's going to be 2 in total. So this one, like I said, just a thin layer, nothing special here. Just get this on, have it cure perfect. Heat gun to help spread it around, torch to pop any bubbles, and let it set. Also needing to make sure that the bottom and the top of this tumbler is ready for these final coats. So again, with my alcohol and a dry baby wipe to make sure that the bottom and the top seams are really clean. The bottom of this, it's also, once that's set, we're going to turn it over and get a layer of epoxy on here. My handwriting is trash. It's so bad. So I did not want to sign right on top of these flowers. If I was more confident in myself, then I would, and it would be fine, and I could do a less, 1 layer less on here, but I usually sign it and then I acetone it off. And it's crazy how many times it takes me. This time, since I did the epoxy first, I got it on the first try, so go figure. Also, that was an ultra fine gold thin marker. I'll have that also in the description. I don't know where I got it from, but I know you can find it on Amazon, so I will have that in there so you guys can go grab one. They're really great, especially for the bottom of these tumblers. It just works out so perfect. So I had that on there, made sure it dried, and then I did a layer of UV resin. I'm so excited to get this done. I skipped any other epoxy and I was like, let's get the bottom on this and keep on rolling. So right here, I'm just working it around, make sure I have a nice even coat on the bottom. Took this outside in the sunlight because the sun is awesome where I am right now, and had this cure. After everything was completely set and sat for a few hours, I went ahead and gave it a light sand and the final layer of epoxy. I like to make sure that every layer of epoxy is going to go on really nice, so unless I need it to be glossy for something, it gets sanded before I put it on. And that's it, guys. Like I said, I love this design so much. It's just, my dreams are so vivid, so to be able to wake up and remember exactly what I saw and knock it out, I don't know, man. It's exciting. I really hope you guys like this tutorial. I hope it helped. If you have any questions on that water slide or anything else, please reach out to me. Like I said, please subscribe. Head on over to Sippy Couture Community. That's my Facebook group. I have lives on Wednesdays, codes, giveaways, in-person events, all of that fun stuff. And then you also get one-on-one if you need any help, questions, anything at all. So please head over and join us, like and subscribe. And that's it, guys. I'll see y'all soon.